Hey everybody, it's Denise from Nuddles here. I want to show you quickly something that I think is really effective for both quilters on their domestic sewing machine and if you're working with a long arm or a mid arm machine on a frame. So when we start quilting and when we end quilting, there's a little bit of a mystery involved with how do you get that bobbin thread taken care of, how do you lock in your stitches. So that's what I want to show you today. So I'm on my domestic machine, although the process will be exactly the same for the long arm machine. So I'm just going to show you on a sample here how I'm going to pull up my bobbin thread, lock in my stitches so I don't have to worry about them coming out after washing or whatever, and then repeat the process at the end for when I'm done with my stitching. So I'm holding my top thread in my hand, and my bobbin thread is just kind of floating around underneath there. It's a little bit of a mystery where that bobbin thread is. I don't want to leave it on the back because it will just ball up and make a mess and it won't look attractive for the back of your quilt. So what I'm going to do, and every machine is going to do this a little bit differently, but the fact of the matter is I need to get my needle down and my needle back up so that I can pull that bobbin thread up to the top of my fabric. So on my machine, I can do that relatively automatically. I'm just going to lower the needle, raise the needle, and then when I just gently pull on this thread, there is my bobbin thread popping up right there. Can you see that little loop that we've created? Whether you have to raise your presser foot to get underneath there or whatever you need to do to grab that bobbin thread, that's what we want to do. We want to grab that bobbin thread so it's entirely up on the top of your fabric, and then you're ready to start stitching. The first few stitches that I will take need to be really small. I don't want to do them right in the same spot because that just kind of balls up the thread and leaves a little knot that will really easily come out. So what I want to do is take really short stitches really close together for about 1/4 of an inch. Okay, so I'm just going to take some small stitches really close together, barely even moving my fabric. And I think we can all agree once I've done that, those babies are not coming out, whether we try really hard or not. So those stitches are locked in. Now or later, I can go in and snip my thread right up to the fabric. Okay? I snuck in there with a little curved pair of scissors. That made it really easy. Sometimes people use blunt edge on the tip of the scissors. That's nice too, so you don't catch your fabric. But I've locked those stitches in there and they are not coming out. Okay, that's about 1/4 of an inch of super short stitches. Just move your machine slowly and stitch quickly enough to get those short stitches. Then you're going to continue on with whatever your quilting process will be. You can do free motion. If you're doing straight line quilting, that you can do that as well. So just continue on with your quilting process. And then when you get to the end, we need to tie off our stitches as well. So if you were going to maybe quilt all the way around and overlap with what you've stitched before, then you would just simply overlap your stitches. I'm gonna end in a different place than I started, but I need to repeat the same process I did for starting, just in the reverse order when I end. So what did I do when I started? I pulled up my bobbin thread and then I took short stitches. So now I need to take my short stitches again, and I'm just going to move the machine, move my fabric ever so slightly for about 1/4 of an inch. Those stitches should be pretty hard to see differentiating there because they're so short. But now is the trickiest part, okay? So I'll do this for you and hopefully you can watch it a couple of times and it will lock it in for you. So I took those short stitches. Now I need to get my needle up. Again, every machine is going to do that a little bit differently. On my machine, I can just rock back on my heel, get that needle up out of the fabric. Then you want to pull your fabric away. The biggest issue I think people have at this point is my presser foot is still down. Although my fabric is moving freely, my presser foot is still down, which means I still have thread tension on my upper thread. So you need to raise your presser foot to release that upper thread tension, and then you can move your fabric away. I like to move it away about 4 inches or so. Now you need to ask yourself, how long is that bobbin thread? The bobbin thread is exactly the same length as the top thread, but this is going to come into play in a minute. So move your machine away about 4 or so inches, grab onto that top thread, and then I'm going to go right back to where I ended. And I want to take one more stitch, ideally right in that same spot where I ended. So sometimes it's a little bit tricky to see with that distance there. Some machines now have a laser light that you can shine right down at that needle point, but I'm gonna try to aim it perfectly. If you wanna use your hand wheel at this point to really make sure it lines up in the right spot, you can do that. But I'm going to take one more stitch right down in my fabric, right in that same spot if I can. Then I'm going to continue to hold on to this loop that I created and move my machine away again. And pull here, and what are you going to get? There's my bobbin thread again. Okay? So this loop here is actually that loop that I created of my bobbin thread earlier. Now, the last spot that people get confused in this process is they come right to here and then snip that thread. The problem that you're going to have if you do this is, how long did you leave your bobbin thread? Chances are really good if you're snipping right here, your bobbin thread is incredibly short, which means the next time you go to start stitching again, it will be really hard to grab that bobbin thread to start up again. So make sure you're a few inches away before you make this snip. Make sure you pull on those threads to get them all the way up to the seam, and then you can snip right up at the fabric and feel very confident that you've locked those stitches in. And then on the back side, it's perfectly clean and tidy. So that's how I want you to tie in and tie off your threads when you are machine quilting. Whether you're on a regular domestic sewing machine or you're on a frame, a long arm machine, the process should be the same. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions or ideas for other videos, I hope you'll let me know. Thank you so much and have a great day.